Everybody, welcome back to the First Team Fantasy Podcast. As always, we have myself, we have Schiff in the building, and we are covering the Sunday morning slate games. We saw a lot of interesting things happen. Again, if you had large parts of a couple games, you benefited heavily, and if you had large parts of some other games, you may have been fairly disappointed with how this week one went. Kicking it off, we had the Panthers traveling to New Orleans and getting absolutely destroyed by the Saints 47-10. On the Panthers side of the ball, there really wasn't anything to be very excited about. Bryce Young, 13 of 30, 161 yards. He threw two interceptions. He scampered into the end zone with his legs, giving him an 11.64 fantasy finish. And for the people watching that play Dynasty formats, it does suck because I know just last year a lot of people were using a top 2, top 3 draft selection to get Bryce Young in the hopes that he could be the quarterback of the future, but it just does not seem to be the case so far. The backfield, we had heavy interest in Chuba Hubbard until Jonathan Brooks returned, and that also doesn't look the brightest as of now. He carried the ball 6 times for 14 yards, finishing with 1.4. He was not even targeted out of the backfield. He did get the most snaps out of the backfield. He played 54%. Miles Sanders carried the ball 5 times for 22 yards, did not catch either of his 2 targets. He finished with 2.2 fantasy points, getting 37% of the snaps. And the big guy that we had hopes for was Deontay Johnson. I remember he was going right around where Keenan Allen went. And I know Keenan had a crowded room in, that Bears offense. And I leaned heavily to Keenan just because of his track record and also the difference in the offense, the quarterback, so on and so forth. But Deontay, one, didn't play the most snaps. He played 66%. He was targeted 6 times. He caught 2 of them for 19 yards, giving him 3.9. Again, it's fair to panic a little bit, but it's only 1 week. You drafted the guy. I would just be cautious about putting him in the starting lineup next week if you have better options available, especially because of how the ball was spread around. He had 6 targets. Adam Thielen had 4. He caught 3 for 49, giving him 7.9. He actually saw the most snaps from that wide receiver room. Then you got to remember, they drafted Xavier Leggett, who saw the most targets. He saw 7, catching 4 for 35 yards, giving him 7.5. And then on top of all of those guys, they also have Jonathan Mingo in that wide receiver room, who they drafted pretty high last year. And he saw 5 targets, catching 2 for 40. He had a rush on the ground for 3 yards. He lost a pretty bad fumble. He finished with 4.3, 56% of snaps. It just seems like in Carolina, a lot of people were hoping Deontay was going to go there and be that clear-cut number 1, and that still could be the case. But they do have a lot of guys that, 1, they've spent high draft capital on, and then 2, Adam Thielen is just a reliable target. So it's just tough. I'd like to see Deontay separate himself a little bit more before I throw him into the lineup with some confidence. I kind of going to be wary of him for a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, a couple of things from the Panthers side of the ball that I kind of was taking a look at. I mean, obviously there's the Chuba Hubbard thing. He was not a high drafted guy, but one that was kind of falling around the end of drafts, kind of where like J.K. Dobbins and players like that were going,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of as that, little 4-week rental. But granted, they were playing the Saints in New Orleans,
Yeah.
which I mean, when you start off the season with an interception, it's not a good look. So it was
Yeah.
like obviously they started behind and they played from behind the whole time. The running backs weren't going to be involved. But one thing that we liked from Chuba Hubbard last year was his efficiency compared to Miles Sanders. And in the first game of the year, when Miles Sanders is running more efficiently and getting 2 targets and Hubbard's getting none,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of just, I mean, granted, I don't even think hitting a red alert is suitable for Chuba Hubbard,
Yeah.
but still, it's like if he was someone that you were counting on through those first 4 weeks until you found another, it it's a bit scary because it's like how much rushing volume is really going to be there when they're not going to be playing with a lead.
Mm-hmm.
And if Miles Sanders is performing better, they did pay that man. So
Yeah.
who's to say that they're not going to use him over Chuba Hubbard?
Yeah.
The only other thing was obviously we were paying attention to mostly Deontay Johnson coming in, looking for him to kind of take over that Adam Thielen role that was very valuable through like the first half of the season last year.
Mm-hmm.
While he did get 6 targets, yeah, he only caught two of them for 19. That really hurt, but I really wanted to kind of just rewatch this game and watch where Xavier Leggett's 7 targets came from. It was if it was kind of like near the latter half of the game where it was like already way over, or if they were meaningful target. Because just looking at their snap counts, Leggett only played 4 snaps less than Deontay Johnson and 6 snaps less than Adam Thielen.
Yeah.
Well, he's already in there over Jonathan Mingo. He's
Yep.
clearly getting involved. Just something that I kind of wanted to track, like as we're going throughout latter weeks, because as we know about rookie wide receivers, I mean, he's had as much experience on this roster as Deontay Johnson has. So, just something I'm really interested in watching. But
Yeah.
heading over to the Saints side of the ball, where it's kind of funny because Derek Carr had an amazing day.
Yeah. He
Obviously,
did.
nobody started him. Everybody started the quarterbacks that they drafted, but he was 19 for 23, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. One of them going to Rashid Shaheed, one going to Foster Moreau, and one going to none other than Jawan Johnson.
Yep.
So Chris Olave drafters, this was a rough one to watch.
Mm-hmm.
When the quarterback throws 3 touchdowns and not one of them goes to your second round drafted or the wide receiver that you drafted in the second round.
Yeah.
That really hurt. But one thing that we obviously loved in this game and something that we talked about going into the season was Alvin Kamara.
Mm-hmm.
15 attempts for 83 yards and a touchdown on the ground through the air. 5 targets, caught all 5 for 27 yards. So he finished with 22 points in a PPR setting. This is literally what we preached. It is what we preached. If you were to go heavy on the wide receivers and then get Alvin Kamara as your running back one, this is going to be the season.
Yeah.
Now, granted, he might not get fifth. The efficiency is not going to be 5.5 yards a carry every week.
Yeah.
We know that. But that's why his ADP was what it was. That's why you got him where you got him. If we knew he was going to be running the ball, and granted it was against the Panthers, they're only going to play the Panthers one more time this year. That being said, Alvin Kamara showed me exactly what I wanted to see. So I'm really confident with him going forward. Jamal Williams got involved too. I mean, it was so bad that even Jake Haener got in and played for, you know, he threw a pass.
Yeah.
But um yeah, Jamal Williams got in, ran the ball 11 times for 38 yards and a touchdown. Doing Jamal Williams things. Love to see him get in the end zone, unless, like I said, you're a Chris Olave or Alvin Kamara owner. But
Yeah.
at that point in the game, you kind of know that it's salted away and that's the backup's time to shine. Now, one thing that I was really paying attention to going into this week and this year and just moving forward in general is the usage of Taysom Hill. He ran the ball 5 times for 35 yards and he had 2 targets, caught one of them for a yard. But the thing is, the Saints are going to involve Taysom Hill. He is going to be a part of this offense. And as long as he has that dual tag on different fantasy platforms, after that week one with all the tight ends, granted, it's not going to go like that every week. But
Yeah.
if you have a guy that gets hurt, if you were a Ferguson, Njoku owner, if you don't want to pay up for Likely, or if Brock Bowers isn't available, you don't want to try to trade a guy like Taysom Hill is playable. Granted, it's not going to always be the sexiest thing. If he's not getting in the end zone, it's going to be weeks like this, 4 or 5 points, but he
Yeah.
will get rushing volume,
Yeah.
which means he's not going to zero you. And as we saw this past week, especially out of guys like Kincaid, only catching one of his 2 targets,
Mm-hmm.
that rushing volume is pretty big for a tight end standpoint. Now, I'm not going to spend any more time talking about Taysom Hill. That was already way too much. So we're going to move on to the receiving room, where Rashid Shaheed led the wide receivers, uh, caught 3 of his 5 targets for 73 yards and a touchdown. Him and Derek Carr are apparently best friends. As far as the snap percentages go, obviously Chris Olave was out on the field the most, played 79% of the snaps. Rashid Shaheed was out there for 68%. I just feel like Rashid Shaheed is a commodity in this offense. He is someone that
Yeah.
we saw it last year, the first game of this year. It's still happening. The connection with him and Derek Carr is an actual thing. Not a guy that I'd start week in and week out, but weeks that, like, you need a splash from a flex play, you're trying to swing for the fences and they have a good matchup. I don't hate it at all.
Yeah.
The upside is there. And yeah, I mean, it was great. Good job, Rashid. The other pass catchers, I already noted Alvin Kamara caught all 5 of his targets, and 5 targets was the magic number in this receiving room. That was the most anyone got. Foster Moreau was next after that with 4 targets, which he caught all 4 of for 43 yards and a touchdown. Derek Carr likes his guys. We know this.
Yeah.
But you're not going to see that from Foster Moreau every week. To me, that really just says, as far as tight ends on the Saints, I think the one that I trust the most is, I said I wasn't going to talk about him again, but Taysom Hill, just because they have 3 different
Yeah.
guys out there, give me the one that's going to play different positions. And, he's going to get touches at the goal line too. That is just a thing that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then going to the prodigal son of the second round of the draft. Chris Olave was just not involved. I mean, he was out there, he was running routes, but it just is really disheartening to see a team put up 47 points and the guy that you drafted so highly
Mm-hmm.
only got targeted twice. And like I said, the highest amount of targets anyone got was 5. But when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different pass catchers, makes it
Yeah.
a little bit hard. I think where you drafted Chris Olave, you're moving forward with him. I'm not hitting the panic button just yet. It is way too soon, especially after the first week. I feel like that's when the most mistakes are made with games like this. You kind of just have to stick it out through that first week,
Yeah.
and we'll see what is to come. But that's really all I got for the Saints. I mean, oh, actually, I lied. Blake Grupe kicked 4 field goals, had a long of 57, hit 5 extra points, was responsible for 17 of the Saints' 47 points, but he ended up with 22 fantasy points. So if you happen to start him, you also reap the benefits there.
Yeah. It was kind of the week of the kicker. There were a couple kickers that just.
Man, there were kickers that outscored a lot of people's first round draft picks.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting to say, but it's the truth. But to go from that game, we went to another completely lopsided game, which was the Vikings traveling to New York and taking on the Giants and winning very easily 28-6. Sam Darnold looked very good to start the game. He went 19 of 24, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. He finished with 15.6 fantasy points. Again, we're not looking at Darnold with real fantasy value or potentially picking him up, but he did show a capability to get it to his receivers, although it was against the New York Giants. Still a good note to start on. Justin Jefferson was only targeted 6 times. He caught 4 of those for 59 yards and a touchdown, giving him 15.9. It's a solid first week for Justin Jefferson. Their defense was just stopping the Giants. They really could get nothing going. And this game kind of breezed by. I think Darnold only throwing the ball 24 times, and you see a fourth of those going to Justin Jefferson is a good sign. There will be games where he has to throw the ball more, but for week 1, it's a solid start for Jettas. We saw Jordan Addison leave the game with an ankle injury, and he'd been a little banged up coming in, but he still saw 4 targets. He caught 3 of them for 35 yards, giving him 6.5 points. He only played 51% of the snaps. Their new wide receiver 3 is Jalen Naylor. He caught his only target for a touchdown. He played 47% of snaps. But fantasy wise,
3 or 2.
who?
3 or 2. Addison's hurt again.
Yeah. No,
It's his other ankle too. It's not even the same ankle. This man,
he's been going through it. It's been a wild
he got two
offseason.
different. I know that man really has been going through it. He got a DUI and 2 high ankle sprains, one on each ankle. Man,
Yeah, Addison is banged up, so we may see Naylor move up.
sorry.
But I'm not putting much stock into Jalen Naylor or the tight ends in Minnesota until Hawkinson returns. Josh Oliver got 2 targets. Johnny Munt got 3. I'm not even going to spend time harping on them because they're not going to be someone that are viable fantasy pickups. Aaron Jones had a very solid debut for the Vikings, carried it 14 times for 94 yards, did get in the end zone, caught both of his targets for 15 yards, giving him 18.8 fantasy points. He only played 55% of the snaps. Now it's a weird one because they were winning the game heavily. I would think if it's a close game and they needed him a little more, we may see that increase to a 60 to 65% of snaps. But Ty Chandler is very solid, especially catching balls out of the backfield. He didn't run it too efficiently. He had 8 carries for 17 yards, caught all 3 of his targets for 25 yards. It gave him 7.2. He only played 35% of the snaps. But again, Ty Chandler, if you have Aaron Jones, I like him a lot as a handcuff. Other than that, it does seem, they brought in Aaron Jones, they paid him. He's obviously going to be the guy there. Only other thing to note is the Vikings defense did get 22 fantasy points. I think the Giants and the Panthers are teams where whoever they're playing, if those defenses are available and even somewhat capable, they are worth looking at if you need a stream of defense for the week.
Yeah, and granted, there will be the games where they happen to score like
Yeah,
24 points
for
and you
sure.
get unlucky, but more times than not, I mean, I think Daniel Jones had like -4 fantasy points.
He has more pick sixes than touchdowns thrown since they gave him $160 million. That's got to be the grossest stat of all time. That's just insane.
Wow. Wow.
Had you heard that stat?
No.
Yeah, that's a real stat. He has more pick sixes than touchdowns thrown since signing that extension.
That is dumbfounding, but wow.
Yeah.
Christ, I lost my train of thought from that. But yeah, going back into Ty Chandler just a little bit. One reason that, one thing that kind of kept me from drafting Aaron Jones in a whole bunch of different places was I can't remember. Granted, this is off of the top of my head, but since he's been relevant fantasy wise, I can't remember a single season that he played the whole season.
That's valid. That sounds valid,
Like
though.
we talk about guys with, they got the injury bug or whatever, you were worried about. He's seriously one of them because I've had him on multiple teams and like there's plenty of weeks where he just I don't know, he gets hurt quite a bit. So as far as Ty
Yeah.
Chandler, just like with that involvement in the pass game, if Aaron Jones is to miss time, I think that he will be like he's a very valuable handcuff.
Yeah.
Kind of along the line, obviously not a Jordan Mason because he doesn't play for the San Francisco 49ers, but like should Aaron Jones miss time, I think Ty Chandler will be very valuable and startable.
Yeah.
But going to the other side of the ball, there really isn't too much to talk about. As I said, Daniel Jones had -4 fantasy points. And I don't know. I was not expecting him. Oh no, he didn't have -4. He had 6.
Yeah, 6.94. It felt like -4, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, when you Okay, I'm sorry, Daniel Jones. Not really, but it's still he himself said like because the fans were booing them at home.
Yeah.
And he was saying he was like, "No, like I get it. We need to give them something to go out and cheer for." And he's right. You can't go out there and get your ass kicked 28-6 by Sam Darnold in the home opener. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And but he did. He was 22 for 42 for 186, two interceptions, not a touchdown, got sacked 5 times. Tells you the Giants O-line still isn't anything. We talked about the running room. Obviously, it was going to be Devin Singletary getting a lot of nasty volume, which he did. 10 attempts, not a lot, but 10 attempts for 37 yards. How can you really run the ball that much when
Yeah.
you're getting obliterated? But yeah, 10 attempts for 37. Daniel Jones ran the ball 6 times for 15 yards. Wan'Dale Robinson, if he weren't on the Giants, I would be a bit more interested just because he's a little gadget piece. They do manufacture touches for him. They've been doing, the little runs with him since last year. But there are the two running backs, Eric Gray, Tyrone Tracy didn't do a thing. Tyrone Tracy, I was a bit excited for, but it literally has to take Devin Singletary going out for Tyrone Tracy to become
Yeah.
anything. There's just not anything. There is no pie. So there's no pieces of the pie when there's no pie. There's
That's
not
true.
going to be any, they're not going to have plays in the red zone, rushing attempts. It's not going to happen. It's going to be very few and far between. So
Hmm.
the only guy on this team, to be honest, that I was interested from the start of the season and I am still thoroughly in love with is Malik Neighbors. Granted,
Hmm.
he only got 7 targets, caught 5 of them for 66. It was his first NFL game, though,
It was
and he
solid.
was out there for 100% of the snaps. All I want.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
He's the wide receiver one.
And it's clear.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. That was what I wanted coming into this game, and I'll take, you know, 11.6 fantasy points in his opener.
Hmm.
I'll take it. Especially like just knowing what if the Giants are to improve even a little bit, which I believe if some people in that organization want to retain their jobs, they're going to have to get a little bit better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's only going to go up for Malik Neighbors, especially as the season goes on. As far as anybody else, I mean, just being honest, it is hard to be excited for anybody else on the Giants.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to say, like I like the tight end Theo Johnson. He was out there for 86% of the snaps, but what's it really worth if
Hmm.
we need to see more out of the Giant? We need to see not more, something
Yeah.
at all. Life, a breath,
Yeah.
a touchdown.
Yeah.
So, and that was the struggle with the Giants last year. They couldn't score on off. It's the same thing, the same story, just like with the Panthers. We need to see something, but Malik Neighbors is very valuable because he's out there all the time and he is the clear-cut wide receiver one. Really not too much more to talk about on this team because they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
can move right on to the next one.
Yeah. And the next one was again a fairly ugly football game. It was the Patriots going into
I will say
Cincinnati.
this one brought me joy.
Yeah.
This brought me joy.
Yeah, the Patriots beat the Bengals in Cincinnati 16-10. There was no T. Higgins. Jamar Chase did play after not practicing really ever. But it's weird because the Patriots win this game, but there isn't too much to touch on for the Patriots because there isn't many players that we see having true fantasy value on the Patriots. Jacoby Brissett completed 15 of his 24 passes for only 121 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, carried it 7 times for 32 yards just to get dissed by his own coach, which was Gerard Mayo. Why say that to Jacoby Brissett? He won. He got you the win in Cincinnati. Come on. But yeah, Jacoby finished with basically eight fantasy points. Someone who
He's
was
trying to
getting
warm up to the Boston fans.
I that's if you get it, you get it. It took me a second. That is absolute insanity. I'm not gonna, that is just insane. Gosh dang. But he's probably not wrong. That's the most insane part. The guy we had the most hope for was Mondre, and he did come out and perform. He saw 25 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown, caught all 3 of his targets for 6 yards. He played 78% of the snaps, 21.6 fantasy points. A very good outing for him. Antonio Gibson did not get targeted out of the backfield, which surprised me a little bit. He saw 7 carries for 18 yards, giving him 1.8. He only played 22% of the snaps. And this wide receiver room, which I'm not going to harp on a whole bunch, but KJ Osborne played the most. He finished with 5.1 fantasy points. Then we had Demario Douglas with 60% of the snaps, 3.2. Tyquan Thornton saw the third most, finished with 4.7. And Jalen Polk, the rookie, was targeted once, 1 catch, 6 yards, 1.6. And then our tight ends. Jacoby Brissett is not Mac Jones. Hunter Henry is not the clear-cut favorite target of Jacoby Brissett. It seems like their offense is going to function differently. We have a new coaching staff. It's a whole different feel. But Hunter Henry was still out there the most, but he only saw 3 targets in comparison to Austin Hooper's 4.
Austin Hooper was a Raider last year, right?
He was.
What is up with these two teams just interchanging players?
Except normally it's their players coming to us.
Go to the Raiders. This one is. I was just like, wait a second.
I'll say it again. Thank you for Jack Jones. That's incredible. I will take that. But
yeah.
Mondre was the number 1 fantasy scorer for the Patriots. The second highest scorer was their defense with 13, and their third highest was Joey Sly with 10. Congratulations to the Patriots defense. You got them the win. But that's all there is about the Patriots. Still isn't too much to be hopeful for fantasy-wise outside Mondre.
Yeah, I mean, as far as their wide receiver room, it's like not really. I mean, it's gonna have to take another week where they actually, because the reality of the situation, the Patriots started off this game. Well, they didn't start off the game. The first quarter ended 0-0, but they scored the first touchdown in this lead, and they went into halftime up, I think it was 10-0. Yeah. So they were protecting a lead for the whole entire second half. Now, when you look at the stats, you look at the rushing attempts for Ramondre Stevenson, he ran the ball more times than Jacoby Brissett threw it.
Yep.
Is this going to be a typical Patriots game? Personally, I don't believe so, unless they decide to go the Arthur Smith route, and I don't give a damn if we're winning or losing, we're going to run the ball.
Yeah.
Who knows if they decide to do that or not, but my thought is they're going to have to throw the ball a lot more than they did on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, that's when I'm a bit more interested in who is kind of, if they're keeping Mondre on the field for that, which we know he's good at, but that's why I'm just confused as to why they would have went out and got Antonio Gibson, who his primary skill set is a pass catching third down back. So I'm just curious as to in games where they're trailing, which realistically it might be a lot more than, like, I feel like Sunday might be an anomaly for them. Sorry, Adrian. I mean, but we know this. We know this. And if that's the case, I mean, then I'm just curious as to whether or not Mondre will continue to get the same volume. And hey, I mean, he got 3 of the 24 possible targets. It's like a 13% target share for a running, but we love that.
Yeah.
We love a target share over 10% for the running back, especially when it's a skilled pass catcher like Mondre. But yeah, that's just kind of the only thing I'm really looking out for. Aside from that, as the wide receivers and everything, I mean, from a dynasty standpoint, I like Jalen Polk and Demario Douglas, just in case Drake May does end up being really good. But other than that, in a redraft setting like this year, I'm not looking at any Patriots wide receivers.
And Kendrick Bourne they did re-sign him. He's on the PUP. He's going to miss 4 weeks, but once he comes back, it becomes even more
disgusting.
It just gets more muddled. So.
But yeah, like you said, not really too much. I just wanted to throw that thing in about Mondre because I know people are going to be really like high on him after that first week, but I just don't believe he's going to rush the ball 25 times every single week.
No.
Or even close to that.
Yeah.
Now going over to something that delighted me in a real football perspective, but this is a real cause for concern from a fantasy football.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody playing fantasy football. If you like the Bengals, you hate them. Um, Joe Burrow was 21 for 29 for 164 yards and no touchdowns.
Yep.
He fumbled the ball, but the Bengals ended up recovering it. He ran the ball 4 times for 15 yards, finished with 8.1 points. I get that T. Higgins wasn't out there, but Jamar Chase played 84% of the snaps, despite saying he was going to be limited. They were He got sacked 3 times. They didn't have the most insane amount of. I mean, I was just kind of sitting there scratching my head, like, what is going on with this Bengals team?
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, like I said, something when I was watching the fantasy footballers, they mentioned that it's like them not having Joe Mixon anymore,
They have no run game.
kind of. And I mean, while Zach Moss was 9 for 44 and a touchdown,
Yeah.
granted, you're not going to be able to run the ball too much in the situation where you're down and having to pass.
Yeah.
He just doesn't provide what Joe Mixon did for that offense.
Yeah.
And Chase Brown didn't get involved like we would have wanted to see. He ran the ball 3 times for 11 yards, caught all 3 of his passes for 12, but Zach Moss also got 4 targets. So that running back room, I mean, I do think it's headed up by Zach Moss. Zach Moss is going to be the RB1 there,
Yeah.
and Chase Brown is going to kind of spell him, be the third down back kind of guy at times. But this could just be a one-off, but it's just really concerning to see a team that a lot of people, last year they had their injury issues, struggles, whatever. It was really bad vibes this offseason and coming into this
Yeah, it
year, but a lot of
was.
people still had them very highly touted. And,
Yeah.
this is a possible Super Bowl contender. To lose your home opener to the New England Patriots and only put up 10 points, that, I don't know. I mean,
That's tough.
obviously we're still sticking with Jamar, but and another thing that got mentioned was, these guys, T. Higgins did not sign an extension. Jamar Chase did not. So there's like the smallest inconvenience, littlest injury, probably aren't gonna play and risk
Mm-hmm.
the risk their bag. I'm just concerned with the Bengals. It is week 1, I know, and I know how we preach about don't overreact to week 1, but this is a definite cause for concern
Yeah.
because this wasn't like, no, this is bad. And they play the Chiefs next week.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. But I don't know. Like I said, there's just not too much to talk about here. Jamar Chase played 84% of the snap, caught all 6 of his targets for 62 yards, finishes with 12.2 fantasy points. I'm just expecting. Granted, they do have Christian Gonzalez back, the Patriots, who before he got hurt, if you had watched that game where he was covering Tyreek Hill, the kid is good.
Yeah.
So he had Chase locked down while he was covering, but still, it's just like, I don't know. Andre Yoshivas was the de facto wide receiver 2, played 100% of the snaps, caught 3 of his 6 targets for 26. Only other real guy that you were considering starting outside of Zach Moss, and he didn't really get it done. So, yeah, I mean, you can't say too much about a team that only puts up 10 points, other than the fact that we're concerned, and that's that.
Yeah. No, and like you said, any minor inconvenience, there's already reports coming out, and we'll see as the week goes on, but not to be surprised if T. Higgins does not play week 2 against the Chiefs. His hamstring injury is a bit more significant than people thought at first. So, could be
Yeah, and
another
he's going to
rough
protect
week.
himself, and he's going to protect himself over
Yeah.
going. Yeah. Ugh.
It's a scary one. A lot of these morning games were fairly ugly from a football perspective, including this next one. It's the Steelers beating the Falcons in Atlanta 18-10. Justin Fields, someone we're not really considering fantasy wise, especially because once Russ comes back, it is assumed that he will be the starter. But I will say, if Russ misses another week and the Steelers do happen to win again, I'm not completely surprised if they keep Fields out there if he has a solid game and you start the season 2-0. It's just hard to imagine him pulling him off. But fantasy-wise, I don't think either one is going to impact too much on the receivers. Justin Fields definitely takes away some carries potentially for how much he likes to run. He passed the ball 23 times and he ran it 14 times. He completed 17 of his 23 attempts.
But you forget who the offensive coordinator on that team is.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Ain't no carries getting taken away from anybody.
I don't want to say his name.
No carries getting taken away from anybody, dog.
Like,
they gonna run the rock.
Yeah, no, I mainly mean if Russ is in, he'll run it a bit less, and maybe Najee and potentially Jalen Warren or Cordell Patterson will get some more carries. But Fields is going to take some of those when he is there. So
definitely.
But yeah,
I agree with you. I was just
it's great.
That team is going to run the ball like 40 times a game.
Yeah, and they did this game. I'm pretty sure exactly 40 times. Funny enough, that's kind of hilarious actually. But Fields, yeah, he passed for 156 yards, no picks, no touchdowns, 14 carries for 57 yards, 11.94. We'll call it 12. Not a solid week for him. Not someone we're looking at too much fantasy-wise. Najee did get the bulk of the work out of the backfield. Carried the ball 20 times for only 70 yards. Caught one of his 2 targets for 9 yards. Finished with 8.9. Did play 56% of the snaps. But one big positive I will see is they gave Najee 22 opportunities with the ball in that 56% of snaps. Jalen Warren, in his 31% of snaps, saw 4 opportunities. And again, he is coming back off injury. He was not 100%. He did play 31% of the snaps, so I mean, it is a decent amount, but only getting 2 carries for 7 yards and catching both of your targets for 13 yards and finishing with 4 fantasy points isn't the greatest look. He's obviously not someone you should have in your starting lineup, so it shouldn't, have hurt you this week. We got to wait a couple weeks. Wait for him to get fully healthy, see what it looks like, see if it goes back to Russ, if it's going to stay Justin Fields. We just have to see, but, I mean, Jalen Warren's not a guy I'm dropping from my bench just yet.
No, not necessarily, especially, just maybe as he gets more acclimated to. The only thing for me that going into this year was why I was a bit higher on Najee than, because Najee and Jalen Warren weren't going right by each other, but they were going fairly close. And to me, just Najee has because Arthur Smith, he fits the mold of what Arthur Smith wants to do. And he can do it. He has done it. You could give him the ball 20, 30 times a game. Will he be efficient? Probably not, but doesn't matter. So that's just why I like not, because he's going to end up falling into the end zone a few times.
Exactly. He finishes 8.9, but with 20 carries and not getting in the end zone, if he does get in the end zone and it's 14.9, we're very happy with the finish. And you're right. There will be weeks, multiple weeks, realistically, where Najee will get in the end zone. Cordell Patterson is still kicking in the league. He did get 4 carries for 13 yards. Played 13% of the snaps. Just worth noting because he is in that backfield and he will get a couple looks every single game. The wide receiver room, all we're really looking at is George Pickens. And he was targeted 7 times, catching 6 of them for 85 yards. He did run backwards on his only rush for negative 10 yards. If you watched the run too, it was just go down, dude. You're not... Sometimes it's funny to watch them try, they'll juke a couple guys, but it's you're 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage, dude. This is the NFL. You're not going to end up getting out of this and going 30 yards upfield. It's just not going to happen. But he had a solid fantasy week. He finished with 13.5, 68% of the snaps. Van Jefferson actually played the most snaps, but he caught one of his 2 targets for a single yard. I don't even want to waste breath on Van Jefferson or Calvin Austin because they're not going to be relevant fantasy-wise. Pat Freiermuth is someone that, with the departure of Deontay Johnson, he's probably their second best option through the air. He did see the second most targets, and he saw 4 targets, caught all 4 for 27 yards, finishing with 6.7, played 74% of the snaps, and Steelers royalty Chris Boswell scored every single point for them this week. Single-handedly won them the game outside of their defense. Finished with 26 fantasy points. And the Steelers defense finishes with 12. As we said at the beginning, this was the week of the kicker. This was the lowest touchdowns thrown. I think I don't remember the exact chart, but it was showing from like 2018, and this was an extreme down year for week 1.
Oh yeah, I think
thrown.
like the last 2 years were like, I think 2 years ago it was like 60 something in week 1. And this week it was like it was 33 before the Monday night game, and Rodgers threw 1.
Yeah.
And Tyrod threw 1.
Yeah.
So 35.
It was a down year. So that's why it's, don't panic completely about the receivers. It was an anomaly year.
No.
But if you did have Chris Boswell, congratulations. That's an absolutely insane week to have. So.
Yeah, and going over to the Falcons side of the ball, it's Kirk's first game back. Looked like that, it was a little tender. Because, that Achilles is on his, plant foot. But it's hard to really put too much into it when your first game is against a wilding out TJ Watt. He was on that man like white on rice. It was not okay. It was probably the least fun Kirk Cousins has had playing football in a long time, coming off of an Achilles tear and having TJ Watt breathing down your neck for the entirety of a game.
Yeah.
So I can't look at this too much and read. In the event that this is the Kirk Cousins that we're going to see throughout the year, hell yeah, I'm scared. But I don't think that's the case. I think he'll start to get better. And you're going to be a little bit more tentative when you have the best defensive player in the game coming after you. And that's just that. He was 16 for 26, 155 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, finished with 8.2 fantasy points. One thing that we were happy to see in this one was Bijan Robinson got the work that we wanted him to get. 18 carries to Algiers 3, only 68 yards on the ground, but he was also able to catch all 5 of his targets for 43 yards, giving him 16.1 points. Granted, not the best day for a guy that you drafted in the first round with whatever, but we will take that and we will live with it.
Yeah.
The lead receiver who got 7 targets was Ray McLeod. Caught all 4 of them for 52, finished with 9.2 points. Kylo Ren Pitts. Man, if he didn't get that touchdown, it would have been an awful stat line, but because he did, man's finished with 3 catches on 3 targets for 26 yards and a touchdown. Something that we didn't see him often do was get in the end zone for this point, or for the part of his career up until now. So that's good to see, especially for people who took that chance on Kyle Pitts. Drake London had a very disappointing day. But it's we'd hope to see some improvement from this offense. And granted, they were going against a top-tier defense.
Yeah.
So when you put a pass rush like that against a quarterback that's coming off of an Achilles tear, I don't think it's a recipe for success anyways. But I'm still moving forward with confidence in London. He was out there for every single offensive snap.
Yep.
I feel like games where Kirk is a little bit more comfortable back there, and who knows, it was week 1, but like I said, this could be the Kirk Cousins we see throughout the remainder of the year. If that's the case, then yeah, I'm worried about London. But if he gets to where we think he can get, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah.
And Koo kicked a field goal. That's it.
Yeah. The only thing I want to add is with Jonnu Smith departing and possibly the new offensive scheme, we did see Kyle Pitts play 96% of snaps. That is something
Well,
we
yeah, and
did
Arthur
not
Smith
see
is gone
last. Yeah, we did not
because
see that
Arthur Smith
last year.
hated Kyle Pitts, and yeah, so that yeah, I guess I could have, but that was something that almost should have been like, duh, like
Yeah, yeah.
why is the highest drafted tight end ever? Why the hell is he splitting time with Jonnu Smith?
Like dang near 50-50 most games too. It was disgusting. So it is good to
Oh
see
yeah,
him
yeah,
playing.
but that is good. Yeah, that was a good thing to note. But where we should have always been.
Yeah,
So thank you, Falcons, for getting Arthur Smith out of there because now we can actually see Kyle Pitts play football.
yeah. And
But nothing more for that one.
yeah, and that'll take us to our second half of the morning games. We are already at just about the 46-minute mark, so I appreciate anyone sticking through this with us. I will try to pick up the pace a little bit on my end. We want to make sure we don't leave out any important details, but
We could cut it in half.
okay.
We could do part one, part two. I just looked